Today on The Big Show, we're talking about presidential pardons, and transgender athletes have made it to the news again today as we discuss it on The Daniel Baldwin Show. It's Monday, June 2nd, and welcome to The Daniel Baldwin Show. We're going to go right into it with viewer mail. Cheryl McClintock writes, "What is the story with all these presidential pardons? When will it end?" Cheryl is from Tallahassee, Florida. Cheryl, thanks for the question. And, I think that the reason why we're looking at this again, we got through all the Biden pardons, which I think are going to resurface. You're going to see that a lot of them were done with an auto pen. So therefore, did Biden even know he was signing them? Did he sign them or even approve them? We don't know. So let's hang on and see what we're going to do about the Biden ones. But here's what came to my mind was, Chase Crisley celebrates Julie and Todd Crisley's prison release as his best birthday gift. So the Crisleys, as you know from their TV show, got in trouble, and I think it had to do with fraud and money and so on and so forth. And the Trump administration has decided to free them and pardon them. So I look at the problem, and I don't know a lot about this case, and I'm just citing this one because it's big in the news right now because they were celebrities and so on and so forth. Evidently, according to them, there was some injustice done and they were singled out and blah, 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 blah. There was no wrongdoing according to them, but they were in jail for a couple of years, the husband and wife. Here's what I think the question that you're asking me is about. What do we do about this pardon problem? What do we do when, let's look at historically. I never criticized President Biden for pardoning his son. I never did. I didn't. First of all, the crimes that he was to have committed were much more against himself, honestly. But if I'm the president, I've been forgetting lately. I have to interrupt. I've been forgetting lately to honor the purple sand. Purple sand is up. I have no idea how long I've been going, but it doesn't matter because I live for the purple sand. So Biden, I never faulted him for pardoning his son. If you're the president and your son has charges against him, drug charges, he robbed something, whatever. These are bad things, don't get me wrong. But you don't go out knowing that by the stroke of a pen, you could pardon your kid and make sure he doesn't do time, whatever. Come on, man. Of course you would do that. You would do that. I would do that. We would all do that. Unless you felt that him doing time would benefit him, like he was still an active drug addict and he couldn't stop and maybe he needed a lesson. I can see, I've told people before during interventions and the intervention process, you might want him to go in for a little while. You might want him to see what the inside of a cell looks like. It's not a pretty place, and it might help right that ship. This was not the case here with the Crisleys and either with Hunter Biden. It was his dad. So he exercised that right. My problem is doing these blanket pardons for people who have yet to be prosecuted or charged, like the Faucis of the world. I'm interested in knowing how much he knew. I'm interested in knowing how much money he made. I'm interested in knowing, did he misuse his power for the sake of making money that cost American lives or lives anywhere? If that's true, wow. That pardon should be lifted. There should be some law, or if it was done by auto pen and it's not actually official, that guy should be prosecuted. War crimes prosecuted. That's bad stuff. I don't know that to be a fact. I have my suspicions, but I do have a remedy to the situation. Believe it or not, I have come up with a solution to the problem. If you ask for some type of judicial oversight, if someone had to like a checks and balances system, if you had to look at the pardons and say, yeah, man, we don't agree with that, then I don't believe that's truly a presidential pardon. So I thought that as possible, but that would be biased. He would only have the vice president and this one and that one, and they would all all of the pardons that he signed. So that wouldn't work. But what if we limited the number? What if, say, the president was allowed 10 pardons for each year he's president for the first 3, and then 40 as a closing gift? He walks out with 40. All in all, 70 pardons. Then you would see the value of those pardons go way, way up. He gives out his 10 the first year, and you got to be careful. You only have 10. He gives out his 10 the second and the third year. And then he's about to leave office, and he only has 40. And he can't blanket give out 500 pardons to all his boys. And he only has 40. He only has 20, whatever you make the number at. But if you limited the number of those pardons, if you made them have true numerical value, because there's a limit to how many he can give, watch all the guys that he gives them to that were marginal go out the door. Watch. Watch how fast you would make the pardons really valuable. And there wouldn't just be, a closing gift when you're at Macy's. So that, Cheryl, is my take on pardons. Good luck to the Grizzlies if that's why you brought it up. But we're going to get into, because it's been all over the news again today and lately, because in California, there's a high school athlete who's about to win like 3 events. I think the triple jump, the long jump, and the high jump. And she identifies as a woman, but she was born a boy. So let me get into this first with this description, because I got a lot of paperwork on this one. I wanted to make sure I was armed with the naysayers. And I have a great example. Identifying as a female means someone understands their own internal sense of gender as a woman, regardless of their sex they were assigned at birth. So let me review that now, because this has become a very controversial issue in some places, not globally, but in some places. If deep inside you're born a man, but deep inside you identify, you feel viscerally that you are a woman, then you can go through certain modifications or changes. I don't believe those are regulated, what level you have to have gone through before the athletic associations that regulate state to state, high school, college, Olympic, professional, will allow you to compete as and we're using right now males going to female, because that seems to be, there aren't a lot of females who want to compete with the boys. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that? There are not a lot of high school athletes that are girls that want to identify as a boy and compete with the boys. Hang on, let's repeat that now. Not a lot of girls want to compete against the boys. Why? Because they would get their ass kicked. That's why. That's why. If you were to put girls, really good, really talented athletic girls, if you were to take Reese from the WNBA, and you were to take, doesn't matter who you take, the best 5 players, forget about the best 5 all-star players in the WNBA, and play against the 5 worst bench warming, never playing the game NBA players. The men would beat the girls by 3 times their score. Easily 3 times their score. Crush them. If you took Duke University's starting men's basketball team, college team, and played the all-star team of the WNBA, the Duke University players would win by 40. They would crush them. That's how significant a difference we're talking about here. So let me go on. The debate about transgender athletes competing in women's sports centers on fairness and potential advantages related to the biological differences. Now, most of the planet, and even in our country, this is one of the few things that if you ask Democrats and you ask Republicans, besides maybe California and a few other very woke places, people look at it, it's kind of a no-brainer. When you're especially if you're the parent of an athlete. My daughter plays volleyball. She's played for years. And if I was to see athletes playing against her that were boys, that identified as a girl, that are spiking the ball and smashing it in their face, and obviously are physically superior. And they are physically superior. This is why when you're born, one has a penis and one has a vagina, and you identify as that because that's what you were born as. That's how God wrapped it up. What you identify as, and no one has told you you can't live your life that way. Man, go do what you got to do. Go identify, live, adopt children, have, whatever it is. I don't care. I don't really care. I have a happy life. Do it. But the fact that you're going to take a drastic physiological advantage into the game against a species that you were not born into, no. So listen to this. Adult males are stronger, more powerful, and faster than females of similar age and training status. That's a fact. This is not a debate about what someone identifies as. This is not something that we're speculating about. The boy athlete that identifies as a female, that is competing with your daughter, your sister, your wife, at whatever level it is, has a distinct advantage. Which gender is physically stronger? Of absolute strength, that is without regard for body size, weight, or composition. the average man tends to be considerably stronger than the average woman. Considerably stronger. Considerably. I mean, we're not talking about 5% and if the girl just worked harder. No, considerably stronger. Ready now? The women were approximately 52 and 66% as strong as the men in the upper and lower body, respectively. The men were also stronger relative to lean body mass. Now, think about that a minute. So a man is 52% stronger in the upper body and 66% stronger in the lower body. We're talking about physical activity against each other. We're talking about what you're born with no choice. 52 and 66%, you have the advantage, on average, when you're a man over a woman. So I look at that and I say, why is this debate even out there? Do we need to have a category then sponsored by transgender athletes? Should taxpayers pay for that? I don't think I'm in favor of paying for that. But certainly the families, I mean, if you can't make the volleyball team in college, they have club volleyball. They have intramural volleyball. So we need to have a transgender Olympics for athletes around the world that identify as male or female when they're not, and they can compete with each other. If they fund that and they want to do that, yes, go meet in Greece, go meet in Iceland, go to Reykjavik, man. Have the transgender marathon athletic competition, whatever you want to do. The question is, some sports were struggling so much to keep programs open, particularly for girls, but for boys also, that you want to send a boy who has or hasn't, he just identifies as, there's no regulation. Remember, it's not like they've taken shots of hormones and estrogen and things as that's regulated. They just identify as. And I'm going to get to my example of why this is total bullshit. Why I'm going to get to it in a minute. I want to, as a young athlete during the 70s, the 1970s, let me read this to you. While testosterone is a crucial hormone for both male and female athletes, its use by female athletes, particularly in the context of competition, is complex and often restricted. So back in the day, when we didn't really see women or men say that they thought they were a woman, we did have women. There was a lot of doping, it was called, that went on with athletes. And there was doping for male athletes. They were shooting up all kinds of stuff. There was rhinoceros hormones. I remember there was a story about Lyle Alzado, who famous football player, played for the Raiders. He was taking like rhinoceros hormones and different stuff from animals that were much stronger mass-wise, gorillas, and he was shooting all kinds of crazy stuff to have the advantage of be naturally stronger. But female athletes, if they were to shoot male hormones or testosterone, which is a lot more, it's in females, but not at the levels that it is in males, you would be kicked out. You would have failed your test. You had to submit the blood test. While there's no definitive historical record of widespread systematic injection of male testosterone by female athletes for competition, the use and regulation of testosterone in women's sports is a complex and controversial topic with a history of debate and policy changes. So there's not like a chart that we can go back or a record that we can go back, because it was kind of almost unheard of, but we heard stories of guys that were doping and women that were doping. There was even, there was a story of a female track athlete. I want to say she was a track star, very tall, and they wouldn't let her marry the guy that she was in love with because they wanted her to marry like a basketball player that was super tall, so their offspring would also have an average and chance of being really, really tall children. So they stopped her, they blocked her marriage. These are the kinds of things that went on when I was a kid, but this identifying thing, because I feel like, again, wait for the example, because I can't wait to put it out there. I don't want to hear what all the woke people, and all the people think about this, because if you start this, if you allow this to go on, if Gavin Newsom allows this girl to get on the stand, which I believe he has, he said, why can't he stand next to the girl that won it? The girl won the award. She's a girl. What the hell is wrong with you? She won the award. She's a girl. He does not qualify because he was born with a penis. That's it. He's out. I don't care what he shot up. I don't care what he didn't shoot up. I don't care. I'm sad for this person, but they can't seem to find their way the way they were born. I'm sad. I am. And all the people are going to write up now and say, That's a terrible thing. Why would you be sad for someone who celebrates it? Listen, something's not right here. Something's not right with this person that they think it's okay to go take an award from a female when they're a male. Something's wrong. Something's wrong with people that support that. There's something wrong with you. And again, I can't wait. I can't wait to put it on. I can't wait. Historically, there have been policies and regulations such as those by the International Association of Athletes Federations, IAAF, to manage testosterone levels in female athletes. These regulations have aimed to create a level playing field for all female athletes and have been based on the assumption the higher testosterone provides a significant competition advantage. The assumption? There's no assumption. You're competing boys. There's a reason why there's boys athletics and girls athletics. Now here is the greatest female tennis player ever. The greatest, unequivocally greatest player to ever play women's tennis.
And men's tennis and women's tennis are completely almost two separate sports. So I'm like, if I were to play Andy Murray, I would lose 6-0, 6-0 in 5 to 6 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. But it's a completely different sport. The men are a lot faster, and they serve harder, they hit harder. It's just a different game.
Here is the greatest female tennis player ever. The greatest, unequivocally greatest player to ever play women's tennis, who goes on to say, if I played Andy Murray, Andy Murray was a good player. I don't think he sustained number one for very long if he reached one, but he was up there in like the top 5 for about 5 years. And you can drop down from Andy Murray, by the way. It doesn't have to be Andy Murray. Andy Murray would kill her, she said. It wouldn't even be close. If you took the number 100 ranked male player, 100, forget Andy Murray, he would beat Serena Williams when she was at her height and she was the greatest player of all, ever. He would take her down handily, pretty handily, the number 100 male player, because of just how much faster and harder they hit the ball and they serve the ball and their endurance. And remember, they play best out of 5 sets, not best out of 3 sets. So it's all geared and shaped around what a male can do athletically and what a female can do. If a female could run as fast as males, why wouldn't they be running for Olympic gold medals in the 100 with the males to be the fastest person in the world? They're not. They're the fastest woman in the world, which is a tremendous feat. Please don't. I'm not trying to downplay that. I'm not at all. But there's a reason why men can't put on a skirt and go over and get the women's Olympic gold medal. There's a reason for that. So as a father of a high school athlete or even a college athlete, and I look at NCAA records or just the spot on the team that's now being taken by a guy because they identify as a girl, and that spot, that scholarship, or that position on certain teams, there's only 12 players. There's 25 on a softball team. So you're going to tell me that that 4th pitcher on the team is going to be a guy, or maybe even the number 1 pitcher on the team, and my daughter doesn't get to play at school because this boy identifies as a girl. I'm going to read this last one. Banned substance testosterone and other anabolic steroids are generally banned by major sport organizations like the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, and the International Olympic Committee, IOC, due to their performance-enhancing effects. So we know that a certain amount of testosterone gives you an advantage, and boys already have a certain amount of testosterone more, quite a bit more than girls do. So now you're going to take someone who identifies as being a woman with that superior physique, faster, stronger, and larger amount of testosterone, and compete with the girls. Okay, so again, I look at this and I think, are we really having this conversation? I mean, are we really having this conversation? So now I'm going to turn it around. Here's my great example. What if I identify as being lighter than I am? I'm 240 pounds. This morning, 240, I'm up in my weight. I got to get down to 225. So I'm addressing that. As a man, I'm addressing that. But think about this now. These athletes identify, even though they're not girls. They're boys. They're born boys, but they identify these athletes as being women. So let's take that to the next level. I want to see what would happen at 64 years old if I identify as a bantamweight and I want to go start my boxing career. Now, I'm not a bantamweight. Clearly, I am 120 pounds more or something. Bantamweights are like 120 pounds. So I'm double the size. But I identify as a bantamweight. Even though you look at me and you examine me and you say, he's a heavyweight, I don't identify as heavyweight. I don't. So I'm going to go down to the Olympic tryouts at 64, and I'm going to beat the shit out of a 120-pound kid. Beat him. He may still beat me because he's younger, but what if I was 30 years old when I decided to make this decision? What if I decided listen, I identify as weighing 120 pounds. I feel it viscerally in my soul. I do. I feel 120, and I want to be 120, and I'm going to become 120. And then I'm going to go in, and I'm going to say, not only do I identify with being 120, but I identify as a female too. So I'm going to climb in the ring with 120-pound females, and I'm going to beat the living shit out of them until they're unconscious, comatose, and taken away in an ambulance to the hospital. You know why? Because I identify as being 120 pounds. I feel it deep in my soul. I do. I feel that. Of course, you would say, you psychotic person, how can you possibly? No, please don't call me names. And please don't discourage me from how I feel and what I believe my birthright is. Because I identify with being a 120-pound female. And I know you support me. Thank you. Think about it. Even if I didn't throw in the girl part. If I said I see myself, defiant to what science would tell you about me, defiant to the numbers that would come up on a scale, I identify that. That's it. What if it was age? What if it was age? What if you're in the baseball league or the basketball league and it's an age, first graders up to 6, 7. Next division is 7 to 9, 9 to 11, 11 to 13. And I take my 13-year-old son, and he identifies, because he's starting to get in touch with his body, and he identifies as a 7-year-old. He feels 7 again. He does. Things went on from 7 to 13 that he doesn't feel fully developed in, and he needs to go back because that's what he identifies in. And he's going to steal your son's position at center, and he's going to dominate the game because he's 5'10". But again, do you see how ridiculous this is? I want that athlete that identifies as whatever they identify, as a female, that's really a male. I want them to have a nice life. I do. I want them, but there's limitations. There's limitations to what's available to you. There's socioeconomic limitations that you might have to overcome. There's physical limitations that you have to. You know how many guys want to play in the league? Charles Barkley, he tells a story that he speaks at white schools, predominantly white schools. And he says, how many of you guys, what do you want to be? A lawyer, a doctor, a scientist, or this or that, whatever it's going to be. High aspirations for and intention for what they want to do with their skill set. And a few hands come up and they say they want to play in the league. They want to play in the NBA. Now keep in mind, there's 32 teams in the NBA, 32 teams with 12 guys on each team. So there's under 400 players that actually get to the NBA each year, that play in the NBA. With injury, add a few guys that come out of injury reserve and guys that bring up from the G League. Let's just call it around 400. And then Barkley says he goes to predominantly African-American schools and he speaks. And how many of you guys, what do you want to be? I want to play in the NBA. I want to play in the NFL. I want to play. A lot of them, they talk about how they want to be a professional athlete. And the fact that, and Charles said it breaks his heart because the number of kids that are actually going to play in the NBA is so small. Because there's guys that are already in the league. So every year, 30 guys maybe rotate in and 30 guys retire, maybe somewhere around there. So your chances of getting into the league or bumping somebody out coming out of high school, very few guys come out of high school. They got to go to college. And now colleges, you can make money playing in college. So there's guys that don't want to leave college and go to the NBA. But you get the point. For Barkley, he talks about how sad that is to him. that he knows that none of them, or very few of them, are ever going to see any time on an NBA basketball court. That's just how hard. But there's a higher probability that they could become a lawyer. There is, percentage-wise. They'll become a lawyer before they'll become an NBA basketball player. And you look at that and you think, wow, they're putting so much weight, they're putting so much emphasis on something that's almost impossible to attain. So therefore, they're going to fall short of their mark. And what happens when they bank and they don't go get the grades and they don't go get the education and they don't have the fallback opportunity that the average college athlete has, and then they're left with nothing. They failed. They're done by 22. Then they're going to take some more mediocre or menial job, which again, there's nothing wrong with a career in landscaping or a career in whatever it is you're going to, but they're not going to be a lawyer or a doctor or something more significant because they don't even want, that's not even on the list. Playing in the NBA is on the list. Look at what's going on with these athletes right now. Look at what we've decided, the message we're going to send people. We're going to send a message to them to do something that is ridiculous. Ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous to allow these boys to compete against girls. I'm dumbfounded. I'm dumbfounded by the people, anyone that supports this. I really am. You obviously have never had a daughter. I was a wrestler in high school. My brother Billy was a wrestler. Billy was a really good wrestler. He wrestled at Binghamton University after. I just wrestled in high school for a couple of years so I could play a sport with my brother Billy. But I was pretty good at it. I was pretty good. I can't imagine what I would have done if a girl walked out on that mat. Like in my time, I don't think anybody on my team, Mike Doherty, John Valva, the guys that were our leaders of our team would have said, bury her, drill her, like I would have been frightened that I would have hurt her if she came out on the mat. Nor were there really any girls. It's more common now, but they've made a league out of it for girls to wrestle each other. To have a girl come out, maybe at a very young age, it's possible to have a girl come out and wrestle a boy. But by the time they're past like 10th grade, you're never going to see a girl that's state champion, I don't believe, in wrestling. Not her senior year. It just catches up to you, the physiological differences. The athletes are too strong, their endurance and their skill set and speed, it becomes more apparent as they get older. So the question really becomes, why would we want to subject a girl to that? That's a girl trying to overachieve going into a boys' game. This is a boy taking advantage of the fact that he identifies as a girl and he's going to go beat up on girls. Wow, I can't. It really just, it makes me, it's such an effed up thought. I mean, I can't even understand the parents that sit there in the stands and watch their son go beat a girl, and they're so proud. He beat a girl. He beat up a girl, or he won a competition against a girl. So anyway, I'm going to take a look at what my rights are if I decide to launch my boxing career for the Olympic team, because I identify as a bantamweight. I want to go to the lightest weight, the light, ultra light weight, like the 90-pound, 100-pound guys. I do. I feel light. I feel airy, and I identify with the lightest weight in boxing. And I want to go box those guys, and I want to win an Olympic gold medal. So I'm going to take a look at that, and you would look at me and go, "Are you insane? You have to qualify on the scale. You have to qualify to be a girl. You can't have a penis. You can't have gone in and had it cut off. You can't have some substitute done because your internal organs and biology and everything else are geared at being a boy. So you should be banned from all girls sports. You should never be able to compete against girls ever. Did I mention ever? Good. So that's my take on it. That's how I feel about this subject. And I'm going to say my prayer now because I think of how absolutely ridiculous this subject is. But I wanted to address it because it's back in again, and I don't think I made my opinion totally clear. I want your questions. I want you, please, to tell me what you think. And if you don't agree with me, that's okay. That's okay. I'm going to go after you, and I'm going to go at it with you, and it's not going to be super chummy friendly. I'm going to tell you how I feel. So I'm not going to call you names. I'm not going to say things to you, which I watch a lot of people on the left do. They throw out, terrible adjectives and other words of description and demonic sources. And I'm not going to do that. You're allowed to have your opinion. You're allowed to say what you want. You're allowed to say what you feel. I'm not going to agree with you. But I will say this. I thank you for subscribing. I thank you for hitting like. So if you would hit like on the video or on the short, on the show, if you would subscribe and share this with other people so we can get out there and make the numbers bigger and hear from more people and include some other things that we want to do in the show, that would be spectacular of you doing. And that many people don't watch the show or watch it once because of what I'm about to do. I pray at the end of every show I do. Some people don't like it. And you don't have to be a Christian, but many religions have prayer. You can pray whatever you want. I know what I believe, and I know what a lot of my base believes, but you can pray. You could be Jewish, you can be whatever you are, it doesn't matter. We all pray somehow and something to do with our religion. So, Heavenly Father, thank you for your guiding hand and your keeping us safe, Lord. And Lord, we talk about today presidential pardons and transgender athletes and how diverse and different and widespread people can be in their lifestyles. And Lord, I ask you and I pray for all of them, God. I pray for all of them to see your light and to know you as their Savior. In your name we pray, amen. There is our prayer, and my prayer embodies everyone. I want everyone to be well, and I want everyone to live a healthy, godly lifestyle. So with that said, I will see you next week.